One and all, to another episode of People Rising.
And wait till we tell you what we were talking about in the green room.
Well, go ahead, Shelly. Tell them what you were talking about.
Listen, it's Friday, so happy Friday, everybody. Please love, like, and share and comment and do all the things you know you're supposed to do. But can we just say, Kim and I are in the same location in the great state of Georgia. And she was just saying 10 minutes ago, it got wicked hot. And I was just agreeing that I don't know what happened. The sun came out and it feels like we went from 70 to 93 in minutes.
Not to mention that like days ago, I was ready to put on like fuzzy socks and
I was wearing fuzzy socks.
Yeah. It's wild. And so over the course of the morning, it just changed. And like my house gets sun in different ways. And so depending on where the sun is determines how warm it is. And I have hardwood floors, so that holds the heat, right?
Yeah.
I was minding my business, and then all of a sudden it was like, it is hot in my house. What is going on?
This goes to experience. We're going to be talking about employee experience, and experience today is the word.
Experience is the word.
That's real. That is real.
Hello, Dumpling Ground. Welcome. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I think folks know us at this point. If you don't know us, I don't know where you've been, and you're missing a whole lot.
New people, Shelly.
New people. Hello, I'm Shelly Jeffcoat. Well, hello, Tanisha Stewart. How are you doing? Thank you for coming back. So I own a brand called Pi, and I have a brand. I'm a brand expert. I'm all about employee engagement, experience, EVP, value prop, all those things. But most importantly, I'm a member of this little wacky group that meets every week, and we're delivering really incredible information to help all of you develop. So we're hoping that you're getting some value out of this. But seriously, if you're new here, we do have a lot of really good topics that we shared. And I want you to welcome Tanisha. Welcome first timers. And again, I just want to make sure that you guys are getting some of the great things that we covered, because it has been a really good solid run of free development information that we've been sharing. Y'all need to catch it.
No doubt about that. You can go back and see the different recordings. Mm-hmm. If you go to the People Rising community, there is a People Rising community, and you request to join, you'll be accepted, of course. all of the episodes are in there, so you can go back to the very beginning and see where we started. So yeah, I encourage you to do that. Lots of great topics covered. Oh, here he is, the one and only Peter Laughter. All right, welcome, Peter. Welcome.
Good to see you.
So we were Shelly was just finishing up. I think she was about halfway through her introduction. I'm teasing Shelly.
Oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt, Shelly.
No, it's not. You saved me. Peter saved me.
So Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Has your beard introduced itself?
It is. They say it takes about 6 weeks for it to.
It's looking good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, hello, Winford. Oh, this is awesome, y'all. These are my people coming through.
Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Like to see it. This is awesome. Great.
Hello.
Hey, Winford. Great. Thank you.
Shelly's got all the fans, I tell you.
I know. She's bringing in all the people. They're following Shelly. She's the Pied Piper.
I apologize for our behavior on this Friday, y'all. But as we have said, it is hot. It is summer, and we've got a lot going on.
Let me tell you something. I want Peter to get into his introduction, but I'm totally exhausted. I'm a little bit like wacky today because this week has been brutal. Heading into another rough week. But Peter, please
Hey, so yeah, welcome. I'm Peter Laughter, and recruiting is screwed. And I help companies tell stories that allow them to connect with the people who matter most.
Love it. Love
Thank
it.
you,
Thank
Peter.
you. And Kim Blue, why don't you let us know?
With the
Oh,
awesome
yeah.
hairdo.
I
Yes.
know.
Yes, right. So this is this is heat hair. That's what I call it. Right. So and listen, Tanisha, I'm here for Shelly too. I just want to say. But seriously, my name is Kim Blue. I own my own consulting practice called K Blue Consulting, and I do all things people, HR, org development, strategic partnership, design thinking, right? All things and end to end, tried and true HR that you might know on the inside. I take it and do it individually with companies and do a lot of coaching and get the pleasure of sitting alongside these brilliant minds for our weekly conversation. So, and I'm currently trying to maintain my cool here in the great state of Georgia because it got like the temperature just turned up
Awesome.
like out of nowhere.
My name is Linwood Ross, and I am the founder and CEO of Accelerate. I asked these folks to come with me on a journey. We are an ecosystem enablement company, and that means that we are building a both a platform and way for organizations to transform, to become ecosystem companies, and for entrepreneurs to develop their ecosystems, which is just all the people that you need to have in your network to make your thing work, whatever that thing is.
Awesome. And can we do a shout out to our regular Katina?
Katina, welcome back. Great to see you, as always.
Yes.
So today we're talking about employee experience, right? For years, I actually heard someone talking about this the other day. I can't remember exactly where it was, somewhere on LinkedIn. They were saying how, employee experience really was not on the board radar before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then obviously, with remote work and all the issues around COVID and the pandemic, the employee came into focus, and then the employee experience also came into focus. Oddly enough, as we were coming out of the pandemic, one of the kind of leading thinkers in digital transformation revised his model of digital transformation to include employee experience. And I'm going to tell you honestly, when looking at the model at the very beginning, it was surprising to me that employee experience was not part of it. I mean, anyway. So it was a big, we're adding employee experience to our focus on digital transformation, and of course now as employers are managing hybrid work, distributed workforce, return to the office, all of these issues relate to the employee experience, and so that's what we're talking about today. What do you guys think about the employee experience?
I'm really excited about this topic, and I will be leaning into some work that was done in the Josh Burson Academy, of which I'm a member. I join their sprints every time they invite and have me, and then we roll out an incredible report. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to share some of the feedback from that for those of y'all who are listening, watching, and please chime in and share your experience. See what I did there as well. We're going to use this E word a lot. So I thought it would be helpful. Something that you just said about the shift or maybe the visibility to EX. For a long time, people thought of employee experience as the people who did the EOS surveys. Okay. The people who gathered feedback within the corporate structure for HR. And they would gather that information so that function, so the human resources function would be able to create initiatives and projects to respond to whatever the employees' needs were. And that essentially was EX. But it really shifted, to your point, around how do you build or how do you maintain culture. And the way, again, you do that is partially getting feedback and insights from your employees. So one of the things that I wanted us to be able to cover within the EX, it is a wide range, and it does, again, it does span all business functions. It touches all issues. It's not an HR problem. I'm trying to get all the disclaimers out so we don't get any hate mail, right? It's IT, it's facilities, it's HR, it's legal, it's your managers, it's your execs, it's you as an individual employee, and then how that actually ties into your culture. How do you look at different growth opportunities, mobility, all of those things. And so we just have to step back and look at it at the very base, the one thing that we came with out of this sprint. And you can find Josh Burson, the EX report, I think it might have been 2021 that we did this. It's a corporate strategy that very simply helps every person do their best and be their best. Okay, that is the overarching statement of it. But then as you start to dial down further into EX as a model and a strategy, the first thing you have to understand is that there is such a wide maturity model that is within that EX role. And there are organizations that don't even have an EX team or an employee experience leader. There's not someone who might have that title, but they're doing a lot of the work. So I'd love to talk about some of those, what that maturity model might look like, because it looks different at different organizations, but quite frankly, you're doing the work. And at least this way you can tap into what might be happening at your organizations.
That is a great point. I'm glad you made it. That, employee experience, that's really something that large corporations, right? They have people who are focused on that. But in the middle
do they though?
Well, I mean,
so
theoretically, right?
I think we espouse that they do, right? I've worked for really, I'm fortunate. I've worked for really large corporations, and it was always front of mind. Mm-hmm. And I worked for a smaller corporation, and it was adjacent to, if the business is successful, then we can put some energy around
there you go.
What it is, right? So it's not a it's not a level playing field, I guess. And I appreciate what you said, Shelley, about it not just being an HR problem or just being this, and Peter, for you being like, but seriously, like, do they really do that? Because like, you have to, sometimes you have to call people in or call things in for awareness, right? That's how we move the needle.
What are the boundaries of an employee experience? Like, what does that even mean? Yeah.
That's a great question. What does it mean?
It depends on where you are in the model. So for example, if you're transactional, meaning you're just focusing on the really tactical relationships that you have, the transaction, the interaction with your employees, that's the transactional level. There's the other level is, and I'm going off of memory, so if you're in the Josh Burson and I get it wrong, don't come for me. But there is another, the second level is supported, where it's really aligned to building trust and leadership. Remember that T word, trust, that we started everything with? So having an environment of trust, having open communication, what we used to call people first approach. I'm not sure if that's a thing anymore.
Oh, it's still a thing. Yeah, definitely.
It's still a thing. That there's a purpose-driven business where you're focused on the mission and the purpose. A lot of organizations have leaned into this and extended into their CSR models, so their corporate social responsibility, in their ESG model. So that's more purpose-driven. And then the final part of the maturity growth is tied to equity. So, how do you create that ecosystem where you're learning from your mistakes? So to the point that Lenwood made about that kind of that shift that a lot of organizations that are hiring him to do basically is that equitable growth. So where you come into play, though, it depends. And I think because EX was so well known for being, again, that transactional, we need X data to support X things. So rewards is going to launch, I'm just making this up. So rewards is going to launch a particular program, and so we're going to use these data points to gather feedback and how do employees feel about blah blah blah, and so therefore rewards can build the solution to support that. And as an organization, how does that impact our culture to say that we are recognizing and rewarding these particular behaviors? So thinking of EX in that way, and then from the Peter, to your point, as I'm thinking about this, not as a HR, but more of a recruiting, then that information has to get distributed to your potential candidates. And what does that look like, right? How do you explain succession and performance in a way that candidates get that? If you come into the organization, we hired you, you're no longer a candidate, now you're an employee. What does that experience mean for you? What are the word from last year was, what are the moments that matter? And what does that look like for you? And how do we define it and make sure that we're supporting those moments, whether it's through support or programs or whatever that looks like? So that's the other side of EX that I think our organizations are slowly moving into. I don't get any sense from the industry folks that, again, I'm involved in these sprints, and it's generally global leaders, coming in and from EX as a function, or coming in from HR or D&I or recruiting or any of those things, employer brand and EVP. I don't get any sense that many of us have moved on the maturity model past transactional, where we're still trying to figure out what is this thing, what does it feel like, and what are the employees saying that they want the experience to be.
And go on, Linwood. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, that was a lot of information.
It's all up here.
It's all in there. But, I think about employee experience as anything that touches the employee.
Yes.
Some things are going to be transactional, such as, how the employee sets up their benefits, how they learn about learn about the 401k, all those kinds of things. But also interaction with your manager is part of the employee experience. So that's kind of just how I simplified anything that touches the employee. And what I focus on is more than experience, because the experience, I want to drive something with the experience.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the thing that I'm trying to drive with the experience is engagement. There's lots of different levels of engagement. And so at the most basic level of engagement is the transaction, that interaction, whether it's with a digital tool or someone in the HR department, a conversation, right? That's employee experience. But it moves all the way up to the most important, which is enablement. Mm-hmm. Enablement for the employee. And can I get the employee engaged, participating as a co-creator in the building of this business? That's what I want. And Gallup just came out with some information saying that, what is it? I think it's 77% of people disengaged.
Yep. I mean, I downloaded the report. I'll pull it up, but
it's great, Peter, because I was trying to get my hands on it before, but so that's employee experience is it. You hear this like, engagement, employee experience. Well, employee experience is about the engagement.
Or it should be. It should be, but it's not. It should be. So that's part of the issue, is because, and again, EX is in a journey. And again, I'm not shading wonderful employee experience leaders that have been doing this for years and have been screaming on the rooftop saying there has to be a correlation between what you're saying here, which is what is the end result. If it's just using your EX team to come up with surveys to figure out if there's engagement, or you could have a highly engaged team but they're not productive, so then you're balancing like what is it. But you have to, at the very basic, define what does that common experience look like. So how do I know that I'm tapped into the experience, the culture that the organization has said, this is who we are? right? So what does experience mean for you? And so again, a lot of HR leaders came up with trying to figure out or identifying at least here are the moments that matter. So it might be, when you're coming on board. So onboarding might be one. It might, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to run down the whole HR list because that's what Kim Blue's for. She's a consultant in that area. Okay. So it's really being mindful about what is the experience. Also, what are you expecting from your employees? Because your experience is not my experience. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And being careful about where you're catching them within the life cycle of your employee, right? And you're right. Defining it is so important. That's where I think we are. There's a lot of organizations that are just taking EX as engagement, which goes back to, well, we've looked at some numbers and now we're using it for EE, not EX.
Any of you Ted Lasso fans?
No.
So I watched the first couple of seasons. He lost me during the second season, but go ahead.
In the first season, there's a great scene where Ted becomes coach. He doesn't know anything about football, what we call soccer. Yeah, everyone on the team hates him, and he puts a suggestion box, and everyone puts in like what an idiot he is basically. But there was a few things, and one of the things is that the water pressure in the shower wasn't working, and he fixed that. And one of his biggest skeptics was like, huh. And and I think the thing is when you talked about employee experience officers, I was like who is not an employee experience officer within an organization? And I think anyone who manages people is responsible for that. And there is no formula for employee experience. It's right. It's like, everyone's got their own love language, and it is also impossible for one manager, is looking at a team of 6 to be able to communicate, that sense of interest. And I think that is one of the things that I think is really missing. We have a model of employee experience is we tell you what to do and you like it, or you don't like it and we make it tolerable, as opposed to let us be very clear on the type of people who are going to work well with this culture. And we're going to really aggressively screen for that, and we are going to create a collaborative environment where we can provide that, where we're actually listening. When someone says, no, not this way, we're thinking, well, what's the reason behind that? Well, tell me more about that. Yeah. Okay. I see this. And we can't do that completely, but the reason you want it is this, so we can do that. Yeah. Like there is no real negotiation. And what I find really interesting is, like, I had a transformative experience about 12 years ago, introducing me to distributed leadership concepts. And then so I had been working on that since about 2010. And I viewed myself as a leader that was non-hierarchical. Right. And then a problem came up, and my solution for it was wrong. And my employees said, no, this is how we're going to solve it. And it was brilliant. And in that moment, I realized, oh, I'm not a flat leader. I want to be. I think I am, but I am totally enmeshed in this hierarchical nature. That it's even hard, even though I view myself, and I think compared to most bosses, and not over the last 10 years, but maybe the last 5, I've been moving closer to that, but I was really far away. And I don't think we really have a concept for what collaboration looks like, because the more I look at it, the more I see that's what. But I mean, I think employee experience is just making sure that people have a good experience. There's no path for that. Or if the CEO is a jerk and you've got an employee experience officer, that person is useless, right? Yeah.
You mentioned something that's like so critically important. I'm so glad that you said it, because it's when you think about the variety of people that are in an organization, you've got to have something at the core that aligns all of you. Okay. And we tend to think of those things as purpose and values.
Yes.
If we can be aligned on purpose and values, now we can get somewhere. And I think one of the big problems in organizations is that they may not know what their purpose is, and their values may not be lived. In other words, these were things that we decided should be our values. We're going to put them up on the wall, but actually operating within those values, we're not doing that. So,
there is no structure around how to put culture within an organization. It's a C-suite creating purpose and values, putting on a wall, and the employees going, "What's that?" Yeah, and then there's no gatekeeping based on it. There's no ritualizing it. I think so.
There's no rewarding, or I'm just gonna get off my chest because this is a real life pain. There is no recognition and no reward around it. It is treated as a marketing tool, and so therefore you can't get resources to support it. I mean, it's a hot mess, but people need it when it comes to reputation management and attraction strategies and retention strategies and all those things, right? I love that you called that out, Peter.
I think it's a challenge for leaders who maybe went to business school and came up in a different time, although that's getting increasingly difficult to say as more time goes by. I mean, I talk about the move from the industrial to the digital era, but guess what? We've been doing it for like 20 plus years now. Like, it's getting kind of long in the tooth. So, I'm not making an excuse for leaders, but we do need to move to a different way of managing, a different way of operating. Some organizations have found it, and many have not. But it is a process that we're all kind of going through. Look at this.
Oh, there's a whole lot of support in the room. It is big
I didn't
facts.
know that Winford was your brother, right? Yeah. So.
Well, he's not my brother, but he is my brother.
Oh boy.
Y'all don't get me in trouble. We are live.
Okay.
Winford is actually he's a retired exec that I know very well, and he's one of those. So here's an example. I'm not sure if he's still on, but I'm gonna call him out because he's an example of modeling those values to his entire network and his employee base that he had, and he was just one of those folks that it wasn't about the values on the wall. It was back to now that I'm thinking, it's back to how you feel and how you're showing up in the experience. So the way that his teams responded was based on him modeling. Oh, hey, he's on.
There he is.
It was really based on how he was modeling, and not just modeling this thing, living this thing out. And they saw it and they were able to recognize it. And then he would reward their behaviors, their mindset. And by the way, a very, very successful businessman and just awesome in all regards. So I'm a huge fan. But he's an example of when you take EX off the wall, Linwood, and really make it a part of your practice in the way that you manage your teams, whether you have 2, 3, or hundreds like he did. Okay. So that's another thing that, when we're talking about the question, is your EX strategy delivering? Are people even measuring it to understand whether it's delivering or not? Or are they looking at back to the EOS survey? Are we asking those 4 questions? Is it the same 4 questions? Do you love working here? Right? Are you attending event? How many events did you attend? This quarter? Or is that what we're doing still? And I think we're at a stage now where you can't continue this model and not have an impact to productivity because your employees have changed. We've cycled out, like, listen, y'all, we are over the hill as far as the next generation is concerned, and we're not going to be around that long, right? So at least not working. What happens with the next generation?
But I think that's the catalyst, right? Like, we put up with this crap.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We put up with it. 26-year-old, nuh-uh. Yeah, no. They are not going to put up with it. And I think that is the critical thing that leaders need to know. I mean, I remember, my colleagues, complaining about millennials, and and it was just like, what are you complaining about? They just don't want to have to go through crap in order to do good work. Like that's
right.
you know, like, well, I had to do it. Yeah. So, so you're going to inflict it on everybody else. Now we've got the Generation Y, who's just like, no, not going to put up with it at all. And I see situations where older leaders are completely perplexed.
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
was thinking
Yes.
about it, as my
Yes.
daughter, who's 20, was correcting my language, about particularly referring to people who are non-binary, which is, but it reminded me of coming back from college and correcting my mother's language, right? And I think the difference is I am looking for it from my daughter, where my mom just slapped me around. And I think that is the shift that we need, is this understanding of how we're leading not working, and how the cues we need to take are from the people who work with us, not from up here.
Yeah, one of the things that I coach on, and I love that point, Peter, when I talk to founders and when I coach leaders, one of the things that I have to impart on them is that you do not have to lead the way you were managed, because they are not the same thing.
Ooh.
Okay. Right? You do not have to lead the
Somebody
way
write that down.
I know. This is
it's not the same. Management and leadership are not the same thing.
Thank you.
Okay. So you do not have to lead the way you are managed. You can lead from your, and now we're relating this leadership, relating back to values, relating back to other things. But if you lead the way you are managed, your culture will reflect that. And so when we talk about experience, we talk about employee experiences. I'm listening to Shelley and Peter make some really strong points of consideration about the change management that comes with that. There is that unique distinction where people will lead the way that they were managed. And so that change doesn't happen, and it doesn't allow for it. Now enter in new thinking, younger generations, technology, advancement in access, whatever. And now we've got this friction in the workplace because other people are like, well, I'm not doing it this way. I didn't even experience it this way at all. And other you're right, other leaders are saying, but this is the way that it has been. And now we're getting the challenge. Well, why? And what about? And what if, right? My 9-year-old challenges me all the time, every single day. And he's Gen Alpha. So I can only imagine what he's going to be like, right, in the workplace, because he is
can.
Right. I have an idea of what I think that he is going to be like, but he's starting. So even at 9, I'm teaching him to use his voice. Even at 9, I'm teaching him that he has a place in the world, right? And not regarding him simply as a kid, but like as a human. It's the same concept, right? With, this whole notion of children should be seen and not heard. Well, what is that?
Oh, yeah.
But if I restrict his voice now, and then he gets to the workplace and he does not know how to speak up, then when somebody is managing him who should be leading him, there's going to be this discrepancy. We're starting to see that friction now in the workplace. So that's what I mean when I say, right, you do not have to lead the way you were managed, because they're not the same thing. And if the culture evolves in that, then I think we can really, then to your point, Lynn, with values aren't just something that's on the wall, right? There's something that are actually lived out, and we can see that. And I think it would go a long way with, right, Shelley talked about, retention strategies, attraction strategies, right? All of that might then shift. Then we could be solving a different set of complex problems, right? Other than some of the ones that we're talking about. But there's those it's almost like a battle between holding on to the legacy of, I had it this way, and you have to do it this way, versus, no, we don't.
Well, I think it's the whole, like, I want to do it the way I was taught, but I want you to do it in a collaborative way.
Right.
And so I think, and that is so, and this is a very good friend of mine, is a CRHO of a startup. And she has a very command and control CEO who thinks he's not, right? And so she brings ideas to the table, and he creams her to smithereens. And so she went through this period of time where she's like, I'm just going to do what I'm told. And which was justified. And then he came back and said, what are you doing? And so it's this whole negotiation where I want you to be creative and bring things to the table. I'm going to beat the tar out of you when you do, but keep doing it. Yeah. And I think that's the environment we're in. And so I appreciate that message with your son, because me, like, I don't know, I probably am not capable of this, but I know my generation is more like okay, I'll just shut up and do what you're told. And what we really need is like, I'm out. No, because if that's the way it's going to be, I'm gone.
Yeah. I mean, even now on very small things. The other day I asked him about something. He was like, "No, Mom, I'm nervous. And I'm not going to be able to do that." And so I had to have a conversation with someone to say, "Listen, this is an experience that we want to have. There's some hesitancy here. Like, how can we work through that?" And it wasn't a full no. It was just this part of it is there, right? And so even early on, wanting to help him just find that muscle, because those muscles will atrophy if you don't use them. But you also cannot flex a muscle that you haven't built. So you definitely have to get into these spaces where it's like that. And when we start to see these generations continue in the workforce, right now there's 5 generations in the workforce. I don't know if anybody has stopped to even reflect on that part, but there are 5 generations in the workforce right now. And all of them, from communication down to, networking, everybody does it different. How boomers define networking looks nothing like how, X, Y, millennial, whatever, alpha defines networking, even in the word economy that we use, right? The way that I talk to my mom and embrace her, right? She's in her 60s, very different than the way that I talk to my child about this very same things. And I'm in that middle generation where I'm fortunate I can go in both directions. And we're starting to see more of that be the case, where it's almost like I'm a translator between this and that a little bit. But I think that's going to continue as the generations cycle through the workforce. And then it's going to really be about what parts of the employee experience or what parts of the culture that we want to adopt that are going to actually shape the employee experience, because that's what people are going to talk about. And I know certainly, Peter, in the recruiting space, like that's then the message, that's the brand that gets put out there when you're talking about, again, attraction strategies. So all very fascinating and extremely relevant as we talk about the war on talent and what the future of work is going to look like.
When you brought up something that I think is so critically important, which is this idea of the language that is used, and how you have these different generations that are in the workforce, and we're not using the same language. And for that matter, when we're working within an organization, even different departments may be using a different language.
Yes.
And if we need to work together, what we need to have is a discipline around the conversation that we're having. Because ultimately, the most important thing about the employee experience, in my opinion, is the work and getting the work done so that we are having fulfilling careers, and those careers are rewarding us with income.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm trying, not that these other things aren't important about the employee experience, but when we're thinking about, okay, what is the experience as an employer that I need to make sure that I can deliver to my employee? I want to be able to deliver them a job. I want to be able to deliver them not just income, but high pay. Me personally, I want to be a high payer, and I want them to have a rewarding career experience, something that is going to advance them. And we all know in different industries that there are some companies, if you work for those companies and you've got that on your resume, it's better for you. Why can't we have more companies like that?
Well, but even those companies, and I was doing a talk yesterday, and someone brought up Google, right? Yeah, and it's one of my favorite examples, because Google's definitely one of those. You got Google on your resume. You're like, I'm a former Googler. I tell people,
I'm Googler. They put it in the headline on LinkedIn.
Google for 18 months. Former Googler. I was like, you have a 20-year career, former Googler. You were there for a minute. Yeah, but I mean, it's a big deal. And so during the tight days right after the pandemic, where tech companies were hiring people, Google was paying engineers up to 50 to 80% over their salary. They offer. Has anyone on this group been to a Google office?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I know Googlers.
So there's
brilliant. I mean, it's beautiful.
They're beautiful. So there's a new one here in Atlanta, Peter. I don't want to interrupt, but to your point, I have seen. So I'm very much in line with what you're talking about. I've seen it. There's
a light.
There's no chance spared. I will say that.
It's beautiful. The food is great. They have exercise facilities and discounted trainers, like everything you want. No one's and people think perks are employee experience, and they're not.
Exactly.
And my point is why the hell does Google have to spend 50% over someone's existing salary to attract them and give all this stuff that nobody else gets to? It's because they think that employee experience is the stuff.
That's right.
And it's not. And
but isn't it part of it though?
Well, maybe not. But I just want to point to, you mentioned the state of the workplace survey that just came out last week, and with this, so 41% of it. Well, I'm going to ask, what would you change about the workplace? 41% of people said engagement or culture, 28% pay or benefits, and 16% said well-being. So that is 85% of the respondents talking about, what is it? Employee experience needs to change. So if this doesn't read as a crisis for leaders, it should.
That's a good point. There's I think Google's being sued for discrimination, and there you have it. That's the experience. That goes back to, it's not about the perks. It really isn't.
Well, you have to it's funny. When we're talking about employee experience earlier in the conversation, I was thinking back to the early days of Amazon. And when Amazon, was basically anything went wrong, they would deal with it. I mean, they would take the product back. They would give you a credit. They would, we'll send you another one. You don't have to send it back. All these things. And what they were doing, which a lot of people didn't understand at the beginning, was creating this experience. And by creating this experience, people got in their minds that no matter what happens, Amazon will take care of me. And that made people want to buy from Amazon, because I know that I'm not going to have to deal with a bunch of crap if something goes wrong. They became masters of the customer experience. Why isn't the employee experience, or is the employee experience, shouldn't it be the same way? Shouldn't we create an experience for our employees so incredible that people would say, oh my God, do I leave?
It's too good. I can't leave. No matter what, I can't go.
Please let me respond to this, because I
respond.
I want to hear this.
Do it, Kim.
Come back, everybody.
So the answer is yes, we should. And here's the thing. Earlier, when I forget what question you asked, or maybe Peter posed a statement around everybody being purveyors of the culture, or owners of the culture. So part of the challenges, and I struggle with how I as a consultant and a leader evolve getting this message into other leaders. But it is literally, if we continue to prioritize the product over the people,
there we go.
How then are people going to affirm their value in the organization? I talk to leaders all the time. They talk about business strategy, and I'm like, no, you need an organizational strategy, okay? Because if you don't, right? And then I say, well, I need to align what your goals are, so that when we're putting together the actual company rhythm, now there's no disruption. Or they'll come to me and say, well, what's our HR workflow? And I'm like, we need an organizational workflow. And part of that is emphasizing the people part of this, because if you don't have happy people, your product is going to be garbage.
That's right.
Or it's not going to be at all. And so if we spent more time, Linwood, doing exactly what you said and prioritizing more of that, and actually bringing light to it, and letting that be more of the narrative, I think much of what people experience in the workplace would be drastically different. And some of these culture challenges that we have would be different. The adoption of inclusion practices or all of that would be so much easier because we're now not bound in such ways, right? Peter asked earlier, like, what are the boundaries around employee experience? I think we silently put them there.
Yeah.
When we don't prioritize some of the things that you're talking about. And so I think that, you want to talk about complex problems. Like that is one of them, how we make this shift to prioritizing the organizational strategy and really uplifting that side of it. And I think that that's something, again, we talk about workforce evolution. I think I said it either last week or the week before. I think the week I had to get off early, maybe not last week, or maybe it was last week when I was talking about, if you look at the history of the workforce, it's never been something we've actually had to put time into because of where it was. Nobody was talking about employee strategy when we were in cave mines, right? Or when we were working in manufacturing plants. There was no, excuse me, not employee strategy, employee experience. The experience was you come in, you clock in, you do your job, you eat your lunch, you clock out, and you go home. It was the same when, you're on mute. You're on mute, Peter.
And if you're lucky, at the end of the day, you end up with all 10 fingers.
Yeah.
Right. But go back to and look at our history. And so some of it is also, we're just getting to the place where this is the new thing that's coming, or the newer thing that's coming into the organization, for companies that are really trying to put their stake in the ground and saying, I deserve to be here. I have presence in the market, but I need to sort of cut corners and do some other things. And we'll get to that. Right. But up until like 20 years ago, maybe even, right, employee experience was something, when I first got to ESPN, everybody was just beginning to talk about diversity, just not inclusion, just diversity. Just that word. And now it's the thing. And now we talked about this a little bit of group. We're now well into belonging, inclusion, justice, whatever, word you're putting there. So it's still very much.
But there is a backlash.
Right. It's still very much in its infancy, so to speak. But I think if more companies did, it very much shifted their priorities to that, it would shift the internal motion that people would have around product, because now they feel connected to it, because now those things are coming back. So, I mean, I could spend the last 13 minutes.
My heart is so happy hearing this, Kim, because this is my space, and this is where I'm battling the most. Here comes another therapy session for Shelly, but this is for real. Like, I think what I'm starting to hear about EVP and values, again, this is kind of where I live. And when I hear leaders talk about it being a marketing tool, and when I sit back and watch, like, the emphasis being, back to your exact point, and this is real life happening, where the emphasis is on the products and on the services, and they forgot the people, or trying to come up with these faux, profile stories that's showing happy people, younger generations figure it out. And I wonder, again, this is why I threw this out, because my daughter is 14. And even though she's 14, she's thinking about college. Kids, listen, teenagers have a good sense of where they want to go, what they want to do, and they will tell you what they're not going to do really quickly. And what they don't want to do is come into a corporate environment where they have some old folk like me telling them that this is how you think and this is what you do, and they're not a part of the experience. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? And I think, because, again, boomers and older folks, we were so, excited about the jobs that we're in. And all we knew was you come in, you do the job, you retire. That's it. And, you get what you get the manager you get, and you just got to figure it out. Right. And these generations coming behind us, that is not the case. So when you think, even from an attraction perspective, if you're an organization right now and you're trying to hire, quote unquote, innovative leaders of tomorrow, and again, I've seen this on some people's pages, if that's what you're trying to do, then you actually have to, at this point, you have to make that transition so that your, your interns that you're trying to hire on as full-time, that this is the experience that they're getting. They're looking to be treated as humans. They're not, you know what I mean? They're not interested in the widget. They're not interested in the product and the service. They want to be treated as humans. See, here's a comment. My daughter said she's a no for corporations, and she's 24. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's it's a really, really, really interesting idea too, is that, and it is the conception of the corporation that I'm sure she's saying no,
Yeah.
right? That like stay in your lane, be in your cubicle, do what you're told. And I think that it reminds me when we talked about the difference between leadership and management, to what extent do we need to be managed in this day and age, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, and stick with me, but when my daughter was in second grade, they had curriculum night, where they invite the parents. This is what we're going to teach your kids, and they went over the math curriculum for second grade, and oh, that's hysterical. I can't even begin. But yes,
podcast. Tell your daughter it is like that sometimes.
Yeah. I call college, incidentally, adult camp, but yeah, it's but I have to, that's even better. So I think, that just totally knocked that out of my head. I'm just going to move on because that was just too good. Yeah.
So, what was I going to say? I was thinking about something else too.
Dumbaground just knocked us all on our
feet. Dad, no, I'm like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally knocked us off our game.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. That was fantastic.
Oh, I know what I wanted to mention. You know, I think that, and this is, Peter has brought this group up. I brought them up. I've spoken about them on I do a video usually on Saturday mornings from my car. It's usually about leadership or personal development. And it's just speaking from my own experience. But it's the Arbinger Institute, and they have a book which they've got a few books. This Leadership and Self-Deception is their book about self-awareness. That has done extraordinarily well. They have another book called The Anatomy of Peace, also done very well. But then there's another book which has not done as well, but I think is amazing. It's called, I believe it's called The Outward Focus or something.
The Outward Mindset.
Outward Mindset. Then the Outward Mindset is really, I talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago on Saturday. The outward mindset is really, really important. You know, Satya Nadella said that the most important leadership quality today is empathy. And the outward mindset gets us thinking about the needs, challenges, and objectives of other people. And when we focus on the needs, challenges, and objectives of other people, and how we can meet them, okay, align what we're doing toward them, we see much more we see much more success. The alternative is where I operate through the lens of my needs, my challenges, my objectives. And that's what I see in corporate America. The organization is thinking about what the organization needs. And so they make decisions based on what the organizations need. We need employees to do this. We need employees to do that. If they flip that and thought about what the employees' needs, challenges, and objectives are, what would happen is the employees will reciprocate and give them what they need.
I think that works to some degree because there are also the risk involved with, this is going to sound terrible, the risk involved with having people who have that selfish response anyway. Where there are a lot of folks who are within the corporate space that's literally just focused on their bubble. So they're always going to come back to what's in it for me. And I don't care how much empathy you have. I said this yesterday at a meeting. There's a journey between being empathetic and being an activist, meaning you're supporting a thing, you're doing something about a thing. Okay. And so there are a lot of folks that are empathetic about, as an organization, or this is how we're going to support our people, but they go back to their desk and they're in it for themselves. Because that's how we came into this workforce.
I'm going to say something that's it's going to sound a little harsh, but I believe it's very real.
Yeah.
Selfishness is de facto.
Yes.
Selfishness is something you have to overcome. You have to change and to not be selfishness. So if you haven't done any work in that regard, you're probably selfish.
Yes.
I agree with you, but I think, Shelley, what you're pointing to is this fear that managers have. If I give too much, there are those who will take.
That's right.
And so I have two things to say about that. So one is yes, and who the heck cares, right? Because if you've got a team of 6 and one of them is all about himself, well, that other 5, will more than make up for it. 2, if your team is really right, that other 5 will drive that one selfish one out, right? I mean, because we protect the people we love. And if you've got a strong sense of love and trust in your organization, then you don't need any of that management, because their coworkers will say, nah, no, because I'm doing the work and I'm sharing and you're not sharing, so screw you. And I think that is the thing, that will happen. But the second thing is we have not defined our culture, and so we don't know how to screen for it, which is totally stupid. We talk about our culture, but like selfish, come on in. You got great skills, come on. You're a jerk, come on in. And we started with this no a-hole policy, but do we really, because we don't know what an a-hole looks like if we don't know what we value, I mean,
This gets into bias. First of all, somebody passed the collection plate for Peter.
Because I know. I'm like, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter.
I'm going to be like, just pass the collection plate. But this, Peter, what you just said, this is now we're getting into bias, conscious bias or unconscious bias. So similarity bias, proximity bias, recency bias. Pick it, right? Name it. But that is what it is. And so to your point, we can't define the culture because we're not clear on our own biases. We don't want to do right. And Linwood said, if you haven't do that, you haven't started to do that work, then it's going to come back to you. But we've not even done the work of doing what you just described. And so now people don't know what things to look for or not to look for because they haven't even held up their own mirror to go, oh, this is what we're doing, or this is what it looks like, or oh, that's what that is, until it comes back to impact them in some way. And now we want to call attention to it.
There you go. Exactly.
But as long as it's working and it's not impacting certain things, then we don't need to rock the boat. We just need to keep moving in a certain direction. That is the part where we move from management to leadership. You can manage a process, you can manage a whatever, but leadership is that awareness that I now have to step into, and the obligation of, if I know something about it, I have to do something about it.
There you go.
And the difference between similarity and culture. And I think that is like what you hit on that is we think culture is similarity and
it's not.
Oh my gosh. Just take up the whole.
I know, like this.
Just take it up, because today, I don't know, you must ate your Wheaties. You ate all your Wheaties today, Peter, because everything you start saying is like.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
I feel so good about myself. Wow.
So we have 2 more minutes. What else do you guys want to say about employee experience? And before we have to go, is there?
We're gonna let Peter close this out.
No pressure. Well, I think the real big lesson learned for me is what Kim said, that we don't have to lead the way we were managed. And I think that I think is the gold nugget of the call for me, of this conversation is that, and a matter of fact, that we have to actively, just like I didn't parent the way I was parented, as a imperative, but it never really occurred to me to view that same imperative by the way I lead. And that was in that specific terms, which I really appreciate.
I like that. Do you have a final thought? I kind of like this, the final thought. Shelley, what's your final thought?
I'm still digesting. I think there's so many things that was called out. And Kim, for me, when you just brought up, when we're talking about empathy and we're talking about bias, and that's sitting with me because I'm experiencing that as we speak. And the experience that I'm gaining from that experience, not to muddle the words, that's really sitting with me. So I'm going to be digging into a little bit more about bias and its impact on the actual experience of the employees.
Love it. And Kim, what about you?
My final thought goes back to what you raised, Linwood, about what if we shifted the priorities, and how do we, if can we convert into this different working model where we adopt more prioritization of the people? It is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about anyway, but through like today's conversation, even more so now, saying, all right, what is it that I know already? And then how do I build or evolve something from there? So that's the thing that's standing out most to me.
Awesome. Well, my final thought is come back. Come back next week for another People Rising. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, y'all.
Bye, y'all.